You know, Jim, we do the superhero theme just because of people like you. It's because people like you exist that we have that theme. Jim Stewartson is with us tonight on Narrative Live. It's so good to be with you guys. It's so good to be with you, Jim. You're back from, what was it, Twitter exile, I guess, for a little while, a week or so ago.
Yeah,
We're going to talk
it
about
was.
that in a bit. Plus, we're taking your calls, everybody. But hi, Jim. How are you tonight?
I was hoping you would ask me that question because, you know, not great, man. We
Oh,
got a lot of work to do. We have a democracy to save, and I just don't feel the urgency that needs to be out there. So,
yeah. I think that there is
I
a
need a,
feeling of that.
yeah,
The
and
time
so
the
I'm,
time is ticking, and we'll talk a lot about that tonight. I think there's a lot that still can be done, obviously, and maybe there's more that's
yeah,
being
no,
done that we can't see. And
I ain't
hope
giving up, man. That's why I'm here.
I know that's why we're thrilled you're here. This is how people can call in during the show. On the original Twitter message that I posted about the show, it may even be under this video screen that you're watching right now. Look in the replies. There is a link in there. It's called Stage 10 is the platform we use. Take that link, put it into a Chrome browser. Only the Chrome browser works, so please only use that one. And then once you click in on that, select a bunch of options, and you'll show up in our standby room. And then seconds from then, you'll be on the air with us live. Maybe not seconds, it might be a little longer than that. But in the meantime, we're just going to keep yakking because we have lots to talk about. And I do want to start with what happened to you. Was it like 10 days ago now? It seems, I don't remember the date. When was it?
Yeah, 9, I guess.
Yeah.
Gimpgate.
Yeah, Gimp Gate. Now, this was an incredible thing because if people don't know, you were taken off Twitter because of a complaint, kind of ridiculous complaint by Joe Rogan of all people who shouldn't be. Was it Joe Rogan directly, or was it his people, or was it other people?
You don't know, right?
You
And
don't
that's
know.
part of the problem here is that
Well,
there's nothing transparent about this. Like I I was, did my podcast the day before. Like everything was perfectly normal. I show up like Monday morning, and it's like, bah.
I know if that happened to
My
me, I'd have
email.
a heart attack. I mean, I'd be really. That would be devastating. It's it's a lot of
Dude,
work that goes into that.
it's like, I mean, I got, I don't know, 5 or 6 thousand hours into this
Mm.
thing. And and the vast majority of the work is basically in Twitter threads.
Unbelievable that they
And
have control over that.
it's terrible. I mean, I've
It's
got
a
a
lot of
million
work.
words
Wow.
in my Twitter feed
Do you
about
have
this
it
shit.
backed up now?
Yeah, I do.
Good. All
Um,
right. So what
and
happened?
yeah, so they I get this email in there, and it says, you have been permanently suspended for violating the Twitter rules against a whole bunch of shit that I didn't do. Right? Like, sexual harassment, all these things that had nothing to do with it. And I think the excuse was that it was ableist, because GIMP is sort of an old
Right, right,
stupid word for people who need crutches or have a limp or whatever, right?
right,
Or you have a gimpy arm, or
right. But it means
there's
other things as
that.
well.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about it as, because here the tweet was that Joe Rogan is Steve Bannon's GIMP,
Yeah. And
right?
you're
It was
repeating
about the relationship
it.
between
Yes.
those things,
No, and
between
that's
those
true.
two people. And so it was just silly. It didn't make any sense. And the issue I have with the whole process is, you have no idea who's recording you. You have no
Right.
idea who's doing this shit. And then I I had to appeal 4 different times,
Wow.
multiple people calling Twitter, and I had the most heartwarming uproar I've ever seen in my goddamn life.
It was really
Like,
beautiful. I mean, I got to say, it was
it
a
was
beautiful
it
thing. People
was
really came to your
it
defense,
was the
and I think that might have helped. I mean, we don't know for sure because as you point out, the process
listen, I
is very
guarantee it.
difficult. But it's
I know
amazing
it
to
did.
me that
I know it
everyone
did.
got together and really supported you in a way that validates your work, because it is very important work that you do, and validates the importance that they attach to the work. I mean, it's sort of, you never really know whether people are paying attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
You, sir, do know that people are paying attention to what you're doing.
Well, I did. I mean, I do now. I mean, I did before. I'm sort of, gaining followers over time,
Mm,
and I talk to people constantly in my Twitter feed and all that. But what I saw, like, I was heartbroken, right? Like, where the hell,
right.
you know? Oh my God, what am I going to do? I was just tweeting away on Medium because I was
Right.
so pissed
Because
off.
you do kind of lose your bearings. I mean, we're so used to Twitter. If someone took that away from me, I'd be like, oh, what do I do today? Maybe
Yeah.
it'd be a good thing, but who knows? Did
Yeah,
you?
well, there was grief involved, right? And that,
Yeah.
but then my Twitter account still sort of worked. You can go in and look at stuff,
Okay.
and I saw like my face everywhere. It was
Right.
amazing.
It was
People
amazing
were
because
people
everyone
were
took.
putting their PFPs, like, I mean, I got a billboard
You got a
with my
billboard?
name on it. Yeah, literal a digital billboard with free Jim
Amazing.
Stewartson on it.
I love the attachment of the whole idea of like imprisonment. That it seems like you were being imprisoned. This free Jim Stewartson thing is
Well,
is
it
is
is,
it is
right?
because it is like imprisonment. I'm sure Donald Trump feels the same way. But who cares?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but for those of us who make a living off this thing and who spend all our time producing content for it, to taking that away from us is like imprisonment. It's absolutely like not being able to participate in life
Yeah,
as you're used to. The
yeah. It's my community, it's my people, it's my
right.
friends. It's how I talk to people in Twitter DMs. It's like. But by the way, if anybody's watching and you've DM'd me and I haven't responded, they are fucking war zone, and please don't take it personally. You can
It's hard
always
to get
try.
to them, but I think maybe the situation is more like the the control that they have, that Twitter has, is, and all these social mediums have, is really challenging to the future of our social media, but also our ability to have free speech. Because now that Paul Singer has essentially taken over from Jack Dorsey, I know there's other people there, but it's really Paul Singer's management firm that he's done all of this.
Yeah,
Billionaire with very, very close ties to Donald Trump. Now that he has
and the
taken over
and the
Twitter,
Manhattan Institute,
yes, and the Manhattan Institute, as you were right to point out.
which which to me is even worse
Yeah,
than Trump. I mean, the Manhattan Institute
Remind me why the
goes back.
Manhattan Institute is such bad news.
What's that?
Why is the Manhattan
Wow.
Institute such bad news?
Yeah, Manhattan Institute is one of the most important and least understood fascist psychological warfare operations
Oh wow.
in America. It is under the guise of this sort of quasi-centrist front, and they manage to get like people from different parties involved in their bullshit, but they have been doing racist and fascist psyops since 1981.
Oh wow.
It was founded by William Casey, who in 1977, who went on to become Reagan's CIA director. So
That William Casey. Okay.
did that William Casey's, we could do 85 shows on just that dude.
Right.
He's
Right. We could.
he's like
He's fascinating.
Knights of Malta, Opus Dei, like the whole bit. Like that dude was out there. Anyway, so William Casey started this institute, and it just started pumping out racist psyops,
Mm.
and I mean that literally. So welfare queens, which was what Reagan used to try and destroy the social safety net,
Hmm.
that came from Manhattan Institute. Charles Murray, who wrote
Wow.
The Bell Curve, one of the like most dangerous racists in the world, because he kind of puts it in this quasi-scientific kind of idea.
Right.
He was literally grown in a lab at Manhattan Institute. Like that they gave him his first funding and kept him going all these years. Broken
Unbelievable.
Windows, which was the
Really
racist, and yes, that is absolutely Manhattan Institute.
brings you back to
Broken,
Giuliani and in his supposed term in as mayor.
and then that turned into Palantir,
Right.
because Peter Thiel was deeply connected to the Manhattan Institute. He
Is
met
that
like he
true?
founded Palantir there, Clearview, a bunch of his shit was connected at the Manhattan Institute. I'm telling you. And then just to bring it back home to today, this whole anti-CRT psyop, that entire thing is Manhattan Institute. It was started by this
CRT. Yes, sorry, okay.
Yeah, so the nonsense that somehow CRT is a thing at all in our schools and is taking over. It is a pure racist psyop, and it was started by Christopher Rufo, who is a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute.
Wow.
And
so do you think it might be a front for something? It seems like it might be a front. I mean, I see organizations like that doing this broad range of activity over so many years for no money. I mean, why are they doing it, really?
Because they have Mercer money, first of all.
So they're front.
and they have Paul Singer money.
Right, okay.
Right? But that's the point, is that thing is funded by the same guy who controls my goddamn Twitter account right now.
Right. And that's why, to me, I think
the guy who's doing the anti-CRT shit is also controlling Twitter.
Yeah.
Absorb that, because it's
very scary. I mean, I actually, when you landed up being, because it happened on the same day. I think you were taken off Twitter at the same day that Paul Singer took over, and Jack Dorsey was fired. So I was like, that's not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences.
So
that's like someone's first day on the job saying,
they changed the rules right then. Right.
All right.
So that there were new choices, and I have whole teams of people out there trying to figure out how to get me off Twitter. Like they spend their time trying to find tweets to report me on and shit.
So it seems that's interesting. It's interesting that they did it on the same day, and that was just as they were introducing new rules. It certainly looks like it was a coordinated hit. Then it was someone was trying to take you down on that day.
I don't know that. I don't want to speculate that there was some sort of coordinate. I know. Look, I've been undergoing sort of constant assault for 16 months.
Yeah,
so it could have been just one of these groups that are just for whatever reason seem to be very focused at taking shots at me. Found that particular tweet, and since the rules had just changed, I guess, because now there's a new security policy in place on the same day. It may be that I just got unlucky. I don't know.
It may be. But it's certainly worth. I'd love to know, and I'm sure you'd love to know.
Bring it back.
But wouldn't you like to know?
My friends who helped me. Yes, I would.
And shouldn't everyone be allowed to know why their Twitter accounts were suspended for any good reason and by whom? And it's open warfare out there in Twitter. It's a real battlefield, as we all know. Yeah. Anybody could be launching an op against somebody to try and get them off Twitter for any reason. The new privacy policy, includes all this doxing stuff. Where we have to determine, I guess, whether something is public information, or whether it's personal information, or somebody's a public figure or not a public figure, as to whether we can share their information. And that's hard to tell who's a public figure sometimes. You're a public figure in my mind, but is it in Twitter mind? I don't know. Go ahead, sir.
I mean, I have a Twitter account. I don't know if that I have a podcast, I guess. By the way,
you do have a podcast. Let's talk about your podcast.
What's that?
So let's talk about the podcast. Tell me a lot about it, if you will, and where can people find out about it?
Just
listen to it at least.
Just go to our Twitter account, Radicalized Pod. It's me and my dear friend, who you know very well, Heidi Kuda.
The lovely Heidi Kuda.
The lovely and wonderful, and she's just been
really amazing, really amazing person. Yeah.
And then we have Sean Connor, who does all the amazing art and stuff, and is also genius about these things. And then Hi-Fi, who is just our resident passionate ass kicker who gets out there in the world and makes a difference. And
how cool is that?
It's been fun. We're 4 in. I think they're getting better. And
so the URL is, or at least the Twitter account that they can go to, is Radicalized Pod. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'll put it up here so people can follow it, and I recommend they do. There's no smarter people on this issue of radicalization and what's happening to our country in terms of brainwashing and ops. These are the people to follow, and Radicalized Pod is the thing to listen to. So there you go. It's at Radicalized Pod. Everyone should follow that and listen to these guys because they know what they're talking about. And I want to talk to you a lot. Is there anything else you want to say about Twitter? Should we finish? Should we wrap that up? Is there any way to?
No, not really. I mean, I do not like having. I mean, I feel like I have value. I have added a shitload of value to Twitter. I got like 500 million impressions or something nuts like that at this point, which is like insane. And how much money have they made from that? Right?
A ton.
They made a shitload of money off of me, and I want some respect. I want some security and some safety and some, so
I do think they should treat creators in a different way. I think creators need to have their property protected. I mean, if they suspend your account and then delete all the content, it's gone. It's sort of it shouldn't be legal because it's not theirs to really remove. I mean, unless you somehow have signed it over to them. But creators need to be able to access their content and their creations after the fact all the time, and it shouldn't be that they can just, with the suspension, also delete your entire history, because it also conveniently deletes an entire history, which sometimes is useful to have, like in Donald Trump's case or other people's case like that.
Yeah, it's definitely it's an opaque situation, and I'll say one other thing that really bothered me.
Yeah,
was I had to appeal that thing 4 times.
Wow.
Each time I got I waited like somewhere between 4 and 12 hours and got a form letter back. Wow. The same form letter, the exact same like stuff that they sent me the first time, with no, like, I'm sending these long explanations and stuff. I'm like, guys, it's not a fucking slur. What are you doing? It's from Pulp Fiction, and like everyone's freaking out. I kept doing it, and they kept sending me the same thing back. And there were some people that told me that multiple times works, and so I just kept doing it.
I had a very similar situation early on in Narrative when they blocked my Narrative TV account, or what was then Narrative Live, and it took the same process. It took so many calls, and then it was only released after Donald Trump was defeated or something like that. That was the only time, or maybe it was the same day that. I think it was when he was defeated. I think it was really strange. The timing was really strange in that. Let's talk about some other things that are going on in the news. I particularly want to talk about Mark Meadows, who tomorrow, maybe it's even happened already. I don't know. But, it looks like he's going to be referred to the Supreme Court, to the DOJ for a contempt referral by the commission there. What's going on? Do you think, the speculation is that it's got to do with not even speculation. The information is that it has to do with the fact that Verizon handed over his texts and phone calls to the commission, which of course they were legally bound to do. And it's probably got some unfavorable things in there. I mean, it can't be that there's good stuff on there.
Oh, no. Mark Meadows is guilty as fuck.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a question. I think the reason, the timing for it was, that was when Steve Bannon's court date got announced.
Right.
It was the same. So Steve Bannon's court date gets announced. Mark Meadows is cooperating, and then suddenly he's not.
No, so you think it's because of the late date? So they're all buying time.
We got a year to destroy democracy. Let's go.
True. I mean, Mark Meadows' case, they actually do want him to be deposed. Where in Bannon's case, I don't think that they ever expect him to show up and be part of the hearings. I mean, that's not going to happen. They just want to get him punished.
But I mean, Meadows is dirty as shit.
For sure.
Like he's not he was in the White House coordinating this stuff. At least Bannon was out in his stupid dark fascist office somewhere. This guy was in the damn White House.
How it boggles my mind that all these you seem to think that they're kind of, maybe not smart is the right word, but they're, they seem to be capable people. How they thought they were going to get away with something like this and not be caught is just stunning. Well, they are and they're not. I mean, they didn't get away with everything that it depends what you think their objectives were on that date, I guess.
They certainly didn't succeed in all their plans. Otherwise, we'd be Gilead right now, right?
Right, exactly.
But
We would not be on the air doing this show, that's for sure.
Yeah, but that them doing that stuff was public, right? They
Yes, but look, they've arrested a lot of people. There's a lot of people in jail who are not going to be rushing out to
those are
support
all
their
the
next.
foot soldiers.
Yeah, but they're
Not
foot
just
soldiers. They've lost their army because their armies, to them for the most part.
no. They got 600 people in jail, and
Yeah.
they've got another 49,999 million to go.
But those people are going to be a little bit more reticent to just follow the next time a president says,
I disagree. It's getting much more radicalized every day. It is getting the appetite for violence, the demand for violence, the extreme rhetoric is as somebody who's in there all the time, intensifying.
You really are.
And it's a clear trajectory. When Twitter and Facebook deplatformed everybody in January, they all went to Telegram.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, for the last 10 months, as I've been screaming my ass off, the kind of cult with a capital C, like community, if you want to call it that, has, I don't know, gone up by a couple of orders of magnitude. Like it's nuts. And
because no one's monitoring it, it's even worse. Because we don't really know how big it is.
It's a Russian in the UAE who's running it.
Right. So there's no way to find out. And they're encouraging it probably. They have no problem. Russia has no problem with this kind of material being out there. And they'll continue to let it. Yeah, it is what they do. It's probably their information psych war that they've launched.
Yeah, the Russians mainly that are visible are all in the neo-Nazi groups.
Right.
Like the connection between the deepest white supremacist groups and Russia and Ukraine is blatant and open and obvious.
Right.
Like you go to the like White Lives Matter fucking Telegram channel or whatever. There's just a bunch of Russians running around. Half the posts are in Russian. They intermingle.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's quite remarkable.
The same thing we discovered last night on the show about WeChat in China, that the same Russian propaganda is actually making itself its way into China on WeChat and also Chinese nationals around the world who are using WeChat. So, it's interesting that China has a lot of control over what content goes out everywhere, that they would be agreeing to let all this propaganda to go out on WeChat is interesting too. These things, they seem so benign, but really we're talking about weapons of war. These things is how America got into all the trouble we're in right now. I mean, these are disinformation machines that are brainwashing people, making them, believe the craziest things, but also making them so disillusioned with their own country that they can't see their way out of it. I think the biggest strike to America has been the blow to American confidence. It's the number one thing that America has compared to other countries, I feel, is their confidence. But this really has taken that aback. We've lost our innocence in that one.
I don't know if that's a bad thing. I don't know if the destruction of the myth of American exceptionalism, is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, but we're just another country. Yeah, we've accumulated a lot of shit because we came here and stole native people's lands and got all these resources and made a beautiful country. Do not get me wrong. I love this country, but let's be real about where all this shit comes from.
Can I disagree with you on that? I do think America is an exceptional country. I don't think there are other countries like it around the world. There are no full-on democracies like America. They're all monarchy democracies, or they all have other sort of systems that are very, very checked and balanced. But I do think that in this particular case, you can say that America is exceptional. There's no other democracy like it.
I think every component of American democracy can be found elsewhere. Most of those because they just copied us, right?
Right. Well, we copied the parliamentary system to some extent. The basic problem is, and if I'm being perfectly honest, is that we are relying on relics as the way to divine what the laws are supposed to be, right?
So Paul Mason came on our pod and he said the First Amendment gives people the right to call for genocide, and the Second Amendment gives them the right to do it. And that is the current interpretation of this Supreme Court, right? Some other Supreme Court with sane people in it that are not cult members from the Federalist Society would say that's not what they meant. They did not mean, the militia meant that every single person gets to have an AK-47.
Absolutely not. That is not what they meant.
And Lauren Boebert should be having her kids with fucking machine guns in front of the Christmas tree. That is not what the Second Amendment was for. It was to make sure that we could protect ourselves in that situation. And it has been simply manipulated and weaponized against us. And it needs So we have this gap between our founding and where we are now, which is that our society runs, 3 orders of magnitude faster than it did then, right? And our judicial system is still, we don't have powdered wigs, but we have everything else. It's all the same thing. And it takes years and years and years to stop people from doing crimes. And that's not going to work anymore. We'll lose our democracy.
We absolutely need to be more responsive. And that leads us maybe to talk about Merrick Garland and the lack of action by the DOJ against any of the leadership in Stop the Steal or the insurrection or the coup, whatever you want to call it. There, none of the leaders, as far as we can tell, is even being investigated by the DOJ. Maybe they are. Maybe there's a secret, very, very quiet investigation going on, but it doesn't appear to be one. So what is going on with that? What do you think is happening there, Jim?
I think Merrick Garland was brought in to be an institutionalist. To restore, the DOJ to its former glory or whatever. I think that's what Biden wanted, and I think
but that would include going after the president who committed suicide. I mean, commit suicide. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. My brain just who committed genocide and also, wow, that was a strange. But yes,
Freudian man, it made perfect sense to me.
But it would include going after the president. Of course, it would, right? I mean, at some point, you would do that. There's no doubt in my mind that would be restoring the honor of the DOJ, would be going after the president who committed a bunch of crimes, including genocide, including, trying to overthrow an election and assume power in a coup. I mean, those are all legitimate things. They're still worried about optics.
They're still worried about shit like optics. About the idea of going back. I'm just telling you what it absolutely looks like to me, right? And the one thing that actually really burns me, and Biden, if you're listening, and you're totally not,
hey,
you
sure
have
he
to
is.
get rid of Christopher fucking Wray. What is wrong with you?
Well, it's not Biden's fault, right?
Yes, it is. He can fire that guy anytime he wants.
But, we just came through a whole period of time where we decided that we don't like that idea of a president interfering in a DOJ in any way or in any FBI investigation because he's not happy
if he's not doing the job, if he's not protecting the American people, he needs to go. Right? I think
that's we need to make our voices heard
to balance, right? One is like norms and like whatever sort of hope and feels that we have about getting the DOJ back, and then there's fucking democracy. And
absolutely,
I would prefer for the DOJ to use every power, every tool in its toolkit. Nothing illegal. I'm not saying that, but Biden can absolutely fire Wray, and I don't give a fuck what the optics are. We need somebody in the head of the FBI who's going to go after people. And
I agree on him specifically, but I think we need to make our voices heard more. I mean, I think a lot of how democracy works is through people protest, through people power, and through a message that's been carried by the people. And in some ways, we've been very quiet at least on the left. There's been a lot of reticence to go out and protest about specific issues. I get that. I understand why, but
it needs to change.
It's because it's potentially dangerous. But we can get out there. We should be safe. There's no reason why you can't protest in the United States, no matter who you are, and you should be able to do it. And
look, the part of the reason why they went so hard after the BLM protests, right?
Mm.
And Antifa, and made up all this garbage about, how it was really the left causing violence,
Mm.
is to put that fear in people's hearts, right?
Mm.
Put the fear in their hearts that there's going to be violence, that there's going to be, that it's a
Exactly.
dangerous thing to do, that
Mm.
it's un-American, that you're going to be looked at weirdly, like whatever those fears were, they were intentionally put there, and I don't think anyone should pay any attention to that. It's
I
our
agree.
fucking country, and we can protest anything we want. And in my opinion, all anti-fascists, all of us, need to come together and start planning mass action.
Mm.
If we get to elect the elections next year and keep doing this Weimar Republic, like frog in a boiling pot thing,
Mm.
we're done. And
Exactly.
so if the government is not going to do it themselves, then we need to force the fucking issue by making our voices heard.
Absolutely. I
And
think
I
it's the
don't
only way that
know
things get
if
happening.
that's like general strikes,
Mm.
just mass protests. I don't give a shit. Like I don't know. I don't claim to have the answer to all the action that all the actions we can take, but I know we have to take them, and I know there have to be mass action. We have to show that we are bigger than them.
Mm.
that they're an abnormal fascist cult, and the rest of us don't want that shit.
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right. We've only got 10 months. It's not even less than a year. We've got to work really hard in the next year to ensure that, the Democrats at least do somewhat okay. But, I would hope that they could win still the House. But we need to get this message out because it's just so important. And if that means that Merrick Garland, is no longer the Attorney General, then so be it. The thing I will suggest to you is a couple of scenarios that maybe suggests to some people that he could be still doing his job right. He's just not signaling it to us. One is that a lot of these people involved in the upper echelons of the Trump world are intelligence assets for other countries. And so normally the way you deal with that is through counterintelligence. You wouldn't go after them necessarily criminally. You would go after through some sort of counterintelligence investigation, in which case no one would ever find out about what was going on because, counterintelligence investigations prefer to be fairly quiet. So that's one possibility I came across, and I thought that's rational. It's possible.
They're not. I mean, they're not doing a current. They don't need to do a current counterintelligence investigation.
But maybe they
The
do. Maybe there is
investigation,
one.
but the investigation was done a long time ago. We said who was doing it, when it was going to happen, and what was going to happen before it happened.
Right.
And after it happened, me and my friends have told everyone exactly what happened, who did it. We said it was Charles Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Flynn is a dirty motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
He Ezra Cohen, Mike Flynn. It is known who these people are.
It is known
Bannon,
who these people are, and we knew ahead of the time.
Prince. It's not a secret who did it. And
But
I am tired of the idea that our fucking Justice Department has to take 3 years to figure out what everybody else figured out on Twitter before it happened. It's just frustrating to me.
They are all intelligence assets.
Satisfied with that. I am not satisfied with it, and I won't be.
But they are all intelligence assets.
My rant.
No, good rant. I loved it. But they are all intelligence assets, I will say. Every single name you mentioned there appears to be associated with some sort of intelligence operation that is not American.
But in the meantime, they've committed a shitload of crimes that we already know about, and they need to be arrested for them immediately.
I agree with you. I think that's falling back on this old school. One is counterintelligence, one is not. One is criminal. Is nonsense.
I don't give a shit.
I think Americans need to see action. They need to see people in jail, and who cares who they are being paid for? Who's paying for them at least?
Every single day in my I talk to people who have loved ones in this who have been mind fucked into this fascist death cult. It is an enormous amount of unaddressed trauma out there.
Exactly.
So many normal people who have had their mom or their sister or all of their family taken away from them they're like these, you know, zombies that are sort of like they used to be, but they're really not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to fucking hear about, you know, what any of that stuff. What I want is for the propaganda that's causing that and still causing it and still bringing more and more people into the cult. I want that to stop. And I want the people who did it in the first place in fucking jail. Now, they like, I don't care what their machinations are, to be honest with you. Like,
Right.
there's plenty of due process that can be done. I'm not saying that we're going to turn into some author. I can see the tweets already. I am saying there is plenty of information in public on my fucking Twitter feed, for God's sake, that should put these people in jail for life.
Yeah, last time I checked, you weren't allowed to commit crimes, even if you are a spy. It doesn't give you a get out of jail free card.
Yeah,
It just means that there might be
people
counterintelligence
are getting
operations
hurt.
underway. Fine, they might be.
There's no. I don't think there's a recognition of how harmful it is, right? Like how dangerous and bad it is for this propaganda to be constantly pumped into people's brains.
It
It
is
is
the most.
literally poisoning our country.
Yes, and it will be
And
take decades to remove or to reverse. It's not something you can do in a short amount of time. It's designed to stick around, and it creates
yeah,
this incredible disillusionment in a society that is very, very hard to get rid of. And so you're absolutely right. I don't think people do have a great appreciation for it. And what sort of freaks me out is it's so easy to stop it. I mean, you have to take a couple of TV networks off the air. You would have to take, maybe a social
Apple
network
and
off the
Google
air.
need to just get rid of Telegram.
Yeah.
That's it.
And maybe
Like,
take Facebook out.
let
Maybe
me tell you
Facebook goes
something.
away. But that's it. I mean,
Facebook too. Well, but Facebook at least has a little bit of boundaries now,
a
right? A
little,
little bit.
just a touch.
Telegram is a nightmare. It is a place where people's brains go to die.
Right.
Like I'm connected to it with my phone number, and I see friends of mine, like old friends, like joining Telegram, and I'm like, boop boop, you're done. Cult.
Well,
Like,
maybe they're joining because they've want to follow this stuff and just get aware of it. I mean, there is a risk that we're not
maybe.
seeing any of it going on. I mean,
Most of these people know they're the exact people I would think that would be getting into this, right?
So you think the numbers are growing on the right? Do you think the number of white nationalists, the number of extreme sort of MAGA type people that number is growing?
Hockey stick exponential growth.
And why?
Like it used to be in like even last year, like finding real Nazi shit was not really that easy. It was like you had to go places, you had to know what the Telegram channels were. Now there are Nazi channels straight up, like Hitler fucking like Nazi channels with like 6-digit like subscribers.
Yeah,
like
the Patriot Front
used to be
marched there on
couple hundred, and they'd be hiding and scared and like, oh my gosh, somebody could. And now it's just growing as a grinder, and you have these LARPs like Ghost Ezra, who they discovered, is actually some idiot and no one cared, who is a bridge from QAnon, which is already a white supremacist, kind of neo-Nazi ideology, bringing them over straight into like just pure anti-Semitic, kill the Jews, Nazi shit.
Yeah, that seems to be growing a lot, the anti-Semitism.
And that pipeline is getting bigger. It's getting more efficient. They know exactly what works. They're testing out new techniques. They're making the videos more traumatic. I mean, it's more and more and more. Until we stop it, it's going to get worse.
Right.
This kind of shit, fascism in general, but especially when you start mixing it with really serious undue influence, does not stop on its own. It will never stop on its own. It must be defeated.
Yeah,
that's
not, especially at the ballot box. I mean, they've gamed this out in a way that they know they can't lose. They can't lose. There's enough state houses that are going to be able to reject the votes of the people by even next year, that it's quite possible that, even next year we won't have a full democracy, which means we need to do different things. And that is also probably gamed out, but that's really the only chance of success in a short amount of time. But like taking these broadcast networks off the air,
they're doing
is one big way of doing it, and taking the social networks down would be another.
For sure. They're. I don't know what we do about Facebook and Twitter. honestly, because they are necessary. I don't want Twitter to go away,
Right.
but it's a
Right.
fucking mess too, right? And like I look at my trends all the time, and it's just like Jack Posobiec op after Jack Posobiec op over and over again. These stupid hashtags, like designed to poison everybody's mind about
Yeah.
fucking Biden or whatever it is. I see it constantly. Like, we have got to be okay with saying fuck that. No, you can't just be a fascist in public like that. We need anti-fascist laws. We need it to be actually not legal to go around doing Nazi salutes and shit. We need to get in front of what Germany had to do after the war, so we don't have a second Holocaust to force it. Because that's what happened, right? They were forced to do anti-fascism laws. They were forced to have, all the measures that they put in place to make sure it didn't come back for a long time. And right now, what it looks like to me is that the Nazis are trying to force Holocaust too, but they think they're going to win this time. And I know that sounds very stark, but
No, I
it's
think
literally true.
I think it's
You go in
literally
there, and
true
that's
as
what they
well.
want.
I think as well the algorithms of a lot of these social networks are encouraging extremism. I mean, there's been various studies around this that show that people, will come in being fairly, mild or moderate on an issue and then get more and more extreme the more they use the platform. And I think about Twitter's echo chambers. It's great that we live in our echo chambers because everyone's agreeing with us ourselves, but it also doesn't let us see what the other side is doing unless we go and seek it out. So, I think a good place to start would almost be to take a look at those algorithms and see, are they really contributing to a healthy society, or are they just ripping society apart?
No, they're not. The Facebook algorithm is the most blatant one, right? Because they decided to change their algorithm to engagement, right?
Right.
Meaning, how do you engage with it? And it turns out that, like, I don't know, like negative stuff you hate is like 5 times more engaging.
And isn't that crazy?
Than that. Not really. Like, it's like when I was out there and I had thousands of people showering me with like love. It was like the couple of people who were celebrating me that like stuck out. Right. It's just human nature to focus on the negative thing because your limbic system, like your danger system, says, like, that's the most important thing to worry about. Like,
I agree. I agree that's true.
All the green, don't worry about that. Worry about the one guy who's talking shit about you. And,
I agree with that, but it's so sad, It really, when you think about it, that we're programmed to actually.
I mean, it comes from like when you had to worry about saber-toothed tigers and shit, right?
Now we have to worry about who's posting something on Twitter or Facebook. It's crazy.
Well, it's that same fight or flight kind of system.
And that's what they're preying on, that system.
What do I do?
Yeah.
Right. I'm either frozen or I'm running away or I'm fighting back. And what they get you on a lot of the time on Twitter, et cetera, is they weaponize that by intentionally trolling you about dumb shit, make you get pissed off, and then either get you suspended or make fun of you more. Right.
Yeah. And it is about fear. It is about fear,
yes.
and they will amp it up as much as they need. So that's why we get a traumatized society, is because these are all fears that they're playing to, and they're going to continue to play to them. And the more they do that, the more traumatic, the country becomes. I want to talk to you as well about Mike Flynn, because he's such a key person in the world of Jim Stewartson. Have you heard of him? Flynn, Flynn, I think is how you spell it. Have you heard of him?
Joe?
No, not Joe. Mike Flynn. Have you heard of him? There's a Joe Flynn. There's a Joe Flynn. He's a fan of the show as well. But there's also Charles Flynn. But you've heard of Mike Flynn, haven't you?
I have heard of Mike Flynn. Indeed, I have.
That man is still running around free, and it's fascinating to me that he is. But people forget his current persona is sort of a quack leader of this weird cult. But just a few years ago, he was negotiating Iran for the American executive. He was having negotiations with the Saudis about what they were going to do with Iran. He was engaged in daily conversations with various ambassadors around the world. And now look at him. He's like he's considered a goofball in some ways.
He's what he always was.
Mm.
He's a psyop professional, right? He is an expert in psychological warfare. He, in Afghanistan, that's what he did. He ran psyop on the population of Afghanistan, and that even more than that, in 2010, he wrote a paper about bringing ISIS techniques into the military, and that we should both train our own people on ways to use those sorts of kind of radicalization techniques, and also use it against other populations. And he compared what he was doing in Afghanistan, strangely, with local elections. He spent a long time talking about how the way that he converted sort of towns and like provinces and shit is by attacking local elections.
Interesting.
By psyoping the local people in these communities to kind of infiltrate and take over from the Taliban or whatever it was. And he just took that exact fucking plan and turned it on the United States. I mean, it's quite amazing. It's really very stark.
And people don't normally do that. People need to remember that people don't go from being the national security advisor to running psyops against their country, especially of this nature, of this magnitude. There is a real, when you look at it that way, when you start seeing how people's roles have changed, but they seem to be so clearly defined. Most people go through their careers doing one thing, maybe two things. These guys go through their career and they're doing like 6 different major projects in a year that are very different from each other. I mean, there's certainly a stark difference from running whatever he's running now, this cult, to running a negotiation with Iran. I mean, those are 2 very, very different skill sets, you would imagine, and not one you'd normally find in a sort of, but not one you'd normally find in such a short period of time.
No, I agree. I totally agree with that. But Mike Flynn's approach to all of those situations is the same. Again, he's trained in PSYOP. He was stationed at Fort Bragg, which is where PSYOP is headquartered, and he sees all communications and all relationships in those terms. Like having watched God knows how many fucking hours of Mike Flynn, I see how his mind works. Every interaction he has, every sentence he says, everything he says is a lie or a half-truth designed to convince somebody of something false.
Right.
That literally, so
he's still operating as an intelligence
comes
agent.
Out of his mouth, all of his stuff, it's the same.
Is he being run by anybody, do you think, or is he really a standalone sort of leader of this movement? I mean, it seems to me there must be someone running it.
I don't think he's standalone at all. I think he's, I think there, as I've said before, there are 5 people kind of who are the puppet masters. Dan and Flynn, Prince, Teal, and Stone, right? But then above that are the money people, the real, fascists, right? And there you've got Putin, you've got MBZ, you've got MBS, you've got Erdogan, you've got parts of the Israelis, right?
For sure.
Who are all partners in the project to create the whatever their version of the end times. They are happy to work with each other despite having totally different ideologies, because they all have the same basic thing in mind, which is get rid of all this fucking liberal namby-pamby people get to live and be happy shit, and let's get rid of 90% of them and fucking create the whatever their fantasy fascist dream state is.
We spoke about this a lot in the last few years now, but also just before we got on the air, we spoke about this idea of this coalition of countries and maybe leaders, maybe it's not all countries, but certainly leaders of countries who came together in 2016 to attack democracy and attack the United States. And those are UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, to some extent, Egypt, Turkey, you suggested, and I'm missing one out. Am I?
Russia.
That's Russia, of course, Russia. So, where do we go? I was saying yesterday that there is also potentially a superpower behind all of that beyond just Russia. And yesterday, as we were doing the show about China and the China syndrome, there seemed to be ample evidence in my mind, at least, that China seems very under the radar, but still very involved in everything that's been going on in the last few years in terms of the attack on democracy. And I don't know if you got a chance to watch the show, but it occurs to me that that's really potentially a likely possibility. Now, what do you think of that? Do you think it's that China is part of this group?
I don't know that they are necessarily a core member of it. No. And the reason for that is just what this group in particular does. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what this group does is attack China very viciously. Mm-hmm. Right. As we were talking
about. You mean the MAGA supporters?
Yeah. Well, the cult, the ideology of the cult includes the idea that Russia is awesome. Mm-hmm. Putin is the emperor of everything. And the CCP is the one who did COVID, who stole the election, who did all this stuff. So what I see is a massive shifting of the blame from, the people who are really doing it to another country that is their direct competitor.
But, Russia and China are allied, right? I mean, there's a possibility there.
They're allies at one level, right? They're allies, like you said, in Belt and Road and in these big long-term projects.
Right.
I don't know that they're
they're officially military allies. I mean, if they go to war, they do war games together, almost, not exclusively, but they certainly do a lot of war games together. They are, if there comes a war against the United States, which they are fomenting, it seems, on a regular basis, then it'll be them two on one side and, America and everybody else on the other. I agree. And that's, they have a 30-year plan.
From tactical warfare.
Well, unless it's all building up to some sort of, thing, it also is very clear that they've always been allies. You go back to the Soviet Union and Mao's period, they've always been allies. And so there's a lot of FSB kind of training that has been transferred from the FSB into Chinese military intelligence as well. So I think that there's also, a significant number of projects that are engaged with together, which requires cooperation even today, like the Arctic. They have a common vision of how the Arctic is going to save both of their troubled economies by finding food and getting food finally for especially the Chinese people where there's running out of food. But that entails
opening up the world.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
But by adding to global warming, making it worse so that their fucking tundra for whatever period of time we get to stay on the earth before it turns into Venus, like they could get some more money from their
they could get more land. Money. They won't be landlocked or ice locked anymore. They'll be able to run their ships at 30% quicker trade routes going to the United States. I mean, that's really the benefit for them. But this is what they're doing. They're engaged in this.
I'll tell you. I'll be slightly speculative and conspiratorial for a second. My fear about what's happening in the short term geopolitically is that it's going to be some sort of divide and conquer, pincer move shit where Taiwan and Ukraine go off at the same time.
I've heard about that. I've heard that theory.
And if that happens, Jesus Christ! I mean, I don't know what. It's gonna be rough, especially if Charles Flynn
is running the Pacific
the traitor,
the
fucking traitor who said optics yada yada and prevented the National Guard from going to the Capitol. That guy's in charge of is commanding general of the U.S. Army Pacific with 90,000 fucking American troops.
Yep.
That is a situation that boggles my mind beyond anything imaginable. The Army lied about whether he was there. The DOD OIG report is a complete farce that was just totally destroyed by General Walker and others who said, "Are you fucking kidding me? What do you mean?" It was a very, very blatant and actually very frightening whitewash. Like it was not even close.
I agree with you on that. Absolutely. There's a
And
real
so if we've got
possibility.
if
Sorry,
got
go ahead.
seditionists in our fucking army, that's a big problem. That's the worst problem of all. Because if we can't trust our military, we're done.
It could be that they have the military. It could be that that's still very much the case. That the military is not necessarily completely beholden to Biden. Although I'm sure they are at the moment, but there's certainly a huge element there that if they were able to keep Flynn in the Pacific Fleet, you get the sense then that anything is really possible about who's in charge there and who's running that ship. But what do that's another good reason let's look at that scenario where you might have Taiwan and Ukraine go off together at the same time. I think that's really unlikely in my mind. I mean, I can't imagine Russia actually invading Ukraine and China invading Taiwan, because it would simply be unconscionable to have, even in their minds, to kill their fellow citizens.
I don't know. Have you met Vladimir Putin?
No, and I hope I never do.
All the time.
But I know they threaten it, but it's actually like attacking, aggressively attacking to overtake an entire country. He already has Zelensky in his back pocket. But he has Zelensky in his back pocket.
Crimea, he's doing it like all over look, Vladimir Putin is a quintessential fascist. Mm-hmm. And by fascist, I mean the only thing he cares about is power. Right. It's not even ideology. It's not, it's not religion. It's not any of that shit. It is the pure accumulation of power. And what he thinks of as power is money and land.
Right.
And so all of the stuff that he's doing to push back on NATO, to get his buddy Donald Trump to take our troops out of Germany, and that whole bullshit that happened right before Trump left. Like, all of that stuff is designed to set this up, right? Like, why else does he have 175,000 troops on the fucking Ukrainian border?
Because it scares America and it scares NATO. Maybe they'll give him something that he wants.
Maybe, but I don't think Vladimir Putin is going to do that just to wave his dick around.
I mean, he's done it before. It's certainly, he's a master of this kind of stuff. But you're right.
I agree. I'm just saying, and I don't know.
I don't want to write off the risk. We have to respond to it.
And it may be that Putin doesn't know yet, right? He's probably trying to figure out but he's putting his pieces in place, right? Mm-hmm. And you see the moves happening in Taiwan. You see, there's a lot of geopolitical kind of maneuvers happening, and then, the whole global economy sort of starting to look a little bit, sick with all this crypto shit sort of popping off everywhere.
I got to say, the American economy is not in as bad a shape as people seem to believe it is. We've got incredibly low unemployment. Growth is doing really well. We've got this huge, bill that we're going to pass that helps us build infrastructure, but that's all good stuff. I mean, why wouldn't you want to build that? It's just the feeling that things aren't good. Yeah.
But there are lots and lots of bad actors who are trying to change that, right? Right. They're trying to change. They don't want the United States to be strong. They don't want the dollar to be strong. They do not want any form of capitalism, for that matter, or global liberal democracy of any kind.
Right.
They're fascists who want some sort of feudalistic monarchist, theocratic state. And
that's still the goal for many people. I can't believe that's the goal, but that's the goal. So we'll see.
There's 30% of people. 30% of people are authoritarian in the sense that they are attracted to authoritarian relationships for whatever reason.
Yes, but that's different from King Donald Trump. I mean,
totally.
If we're going to pick a king,
all I mean is that there is a part of the population that for whatever reason, nature or nurture, is attracted to that kind of relationship and that kind of leadership, right?
Yeah.
And I think that those vulnerabilities, those sort of predilections get you and give them the kind of foothold to start grabbing onto the rest of their brain and sucking them in.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, democracies are fragile, and we are witnessing that right now. And we've certainly seen around the world that when they're threatened, they often collapse. I mean, it's very rare that they survive. I think the American democracy could be the exception to that rule because we have so much going for us. And there's so much greatness in America. There's so much knowledge and opportunity in America that I wouldn't count America out in any way in this regard. And I think we're seeing a pretty spectacular job so far by Biden personally. Now we'll see what happens if he doesn't indict some of this leadership, because I think that is a big issue and probably the tipping point for some sort of action. I agree with that.
And I I cheerlead all this stuff, man. I like the fact that we're actually passing stuff, at all is a fucking miracle. And, there is a lot of really good work being done. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there is still a lot of pretending around the idea that this is a political process anymore.
Right.
It is not a political process at all. This is war. This is within the context of American law, mm-hmm. right? These people are encroaching on every single component of it they can. They're going into every nook and cranny. They're breaking the law when they feel they can. And when there is no consequences, it's suddenly legal.
Right.
Right?
Right.
For fascists, if you do it and you don't get punished, that means it's legal.
Right. Right.
Period.
Yeah.
That's it.
They're out there today saying Mark Meadows did nothing wrong. Mark Meadows did plenty wrong. Plenty wrong. Yeah,
the original guy said that was Roger Stone. So
right. And he's done plenty wrong. Jim, this has been really great. It's so nice to chat with you for a whole hour like this. I'm so glad you're back, and I'm so glad you're an entity on Twitter because, you often provided me probably with the best coverage of what's going on in this extreme right wing. I mean, certainly with Flynn, I think you've been, the best source of following Flynn, and you do have to sit through a lot of that incredibly disturbing video, and you do it with grace, and you put out the most incredible feed. And I'm so glad that you're back on Twitter, and I hope Twitter figures out how to do this a little bit more carefully and humanely for future people, so that people can absolutely object and find a way and appeal to the process, but also protect their content, because I think that's pretty crucial. So hopefully someone at Twitter is listening to that too.
So do I. And don't be insulted about all that stuff I said before, if you are.
Insulted by what stuff?
Twitter.
Oh, we were just joking about that. Yeah, we love you, Twitter. We love you, Twitter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Twitter.
That is our show for tonight. We will be back on Friday with the after show. Looking forward to that. And next week, our big finale coming up for Narrative, where we will talk about how all these foreign nationals were involved in January the 6th. That's coming up next Tuesday and Wednesday. Thank you for watching Narrative tonight. And thank you, Jim, for being here. Please, everyone should follow Jim at Jim Stewartson. And of course, don't forget his podcast at Radicalized Pod with Heidi Kuda. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and have a good night. Narrative is made possible by viewers like you. Join today and support truly independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative. That's patreon.com/narrative.